Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back from the break. Now I welcome you to probably the most exciting and most engaging panel of our time, dealing with AI. Now in your program you'll see this is entitled the Great Media Showdown. There's going to be a real battle on this stage. Of course, a battle of words and ideas. And I'd like to just maybe open this up and talk about very much the format of this. And I think I'd love to, I already see the room, there are some people here watching here, and I'd love that engagement also to include in this panel. Now, I'm a big fan of Oxford-style debating. So before we begin, I'll also ask you, the audience here present, to also help us. And then at the very end, we'll also have a bit of time for questions. So the idea here, pixels, predictions, AI, the media landscape. Is AI a force for good in the media, or is it a sinister force out to destroy all our jobs and our livelihoods? That's what we'll try to attempt here today. Now, I'm really thrilled to introduce our panel. We have a real mix of, I think, wonderful ideas and backgrounds and experts from all across Europe, I might add. So starting in no particular order here to my left, happy to introduce Jonathan Broughton, who's a media expert with over a decade of experience as an analyst and consultant, and currently serving as head of strategy at the EBU. Welcome. Then to my next guest here from Croatia, Hajdi Cenan, who is a co-founder and CEO of Airt, a deep tech startup. Now, she's a regular speaker and panelist at business conferences on AI and startup topics. She was named among the top 100 most influential businesswomen in Croatia. So welcome also here to the panel. And then last but not least here, next up is Mr. Yaroslav Lodygin, Ukrainian producer, director, screenwriter, and member of the European Film Academy. So diverse panel here, and I think each of you bringing a very unique profile to this, which will be really interesting. Right, so and let us begin, because I want to reach out here now to the audience. If you could please raise your hands if you would agree with the statement that AI is a force of good for the media industry, just by show of hands right now. Okay, yeah, panel as well, okay. So I'm looking right now, I see a pretty overwhelming number of hands. Now, if you disagree with that, raise your hands. All right, so the jury's out, done and dusted, so it seems everyone would agree that it is a force for good. So let's try and challenge that here, a bit of a bias in the room and on the stage, so that'll be interesting. But anyways, let's see if your actual minds will change throughout this discussion and debate. Now, let's go right into it, and I'll also be sharing some videos and clips about what AI can do. Maybe we started with this earlier, Jonathan. I want to go into, because there's fresh news. This is very much about AI, writer's strike we have going on, currently ending in California, also with the actors who are still striking, by the way. But you told me some bit of interesting news that very recently, in the last few hours, I think, they've been making some conclusions about writing. And I think core of that was how AI would be part of that, or rather not part of the creative process. So based on that ruling, tell us a little bit, are you satisfied right now? I mean, you were presenting the EBU in a big way here.
Yeah, it's gone well.
Right.
They've sort of negotiated a settlement which is roughly best of both worlds. I think AI is very scary, especially when you're in a job which appears to be at the sort of forefront of what is sort of deemed replaceable or creatively can be generated within large language models, especially. On one side, you've got enhanced productivity. On the other side, you've got your decreased job security. I think, you know, the WGA, yes, it's set in the States. It's a US. It's a US T's and C's, but inevitably that leaks to the rest of the world and the kind of contracts that studios will be expecting to sign. Roughly what it guarantees is that writers can use AI in the creation of their work. They cannot be forced to use AI in the creation of their work, and they cannot be replaced within specific instances of production by generative AI. So it's a massive win, because they get the productivity bonuses of being able to quickly create storyboarding, quickly create dialogue, test it, and then craft it and hone it and perfect it into the premium stuff that we know and love. But of course, can't be sort of directly replaced by it. And I think that's a massive win for writers across the world, to be honest.
Well, the writers may be pleased for now, and I think there's still, I think, certain loopholes in that we don't know about it being challenged quite yet. But at the same time, I think the actors themselves are still on the streets, and I think because of that, an interesting one you missed out on was, I think, the video game industry, especially for voice acting, is still holding out. So I think this is still not quite done. Is it best of both worlds? Well, we'll see. Hajdi, you're an expert on this in terms of the capabilities of what AI can do. How are you viewing, let's say, the creative process? I mean, there's so many great applications, and as we've just said, it helps in writers, it helps with screenwriters, it helps with all kinds of applications. But are we looking at it as also maybe hampering a kind of creativity? I mean, can we really replace that in the tools that we currently have for AI?
I mean, the tools right now are drawing from so much data that already exists. So a little bit like humans, if you think about it. We all get inspired by someone else's work. And when we create something of our own, we also kind of are influenced by other works. With this, it's very technical. So there is existing, if we're talking about writers, there are existing texts, there are gazillions of texts that are available and that were used for for training the data for the generative AI that now you can use for basically writing whatever. Of course, there are still limitations to it. It's still a tool, but as we can see, and we have seen in the past, not even a year, is how dramatically the improvements, how quickly they can happen. And I think that is the thing that has taken everyone by the storm, because nobody really expected it. Like, people really thought before that AI would take over the more manual jobs and not really the intellectual ones. And out of a sudden, with the large language models, with this breakthrough, we have this entire other echelon of jobs that are kind of threatened by it. But that's the thing. I mean, as Jonathan said, technology is here. I mean, it's not going to disappear. It's not going to go away. We cannot just dig our head into the sand and pretend that it's not happening, because people who are embracing it, who are using it, are going to outpace those who are not using the technology. They're going to be the ones whose output is going to be more effective. So it's a thing. I think everyone needs to realize that this technology is here to stay. And we'll see how it will regulate itself. So that is one of the things that is, I think, going to come out through the practice, like similarly through this agreement that was achieved after the strike. Because when it comes to real regulations of laws, and I think that always...
It's a different debate. That's
a totally different pace, and especially with this quick changes, there's no way that regulation and legislation can follow. But I'm glad that at least there are some effects of self-regulation. So with the companies and the people who are using it, to really try to use it ethically and to apply it ethically, even in businesses, even with respect to people that are working for it. Because if you think about AI, one of the most common questions is, will it replace my job? Like, even before this wave, that was the most common question. And it is normal that people are asking that. But when you think about it, any industrial revolution that happened so far had the same effect. So the advancements in technology are replacing jobs. But on the other hand, there are new ones also being created. So yeah, maybe writers as we know them now might not exist in the same way, but in 20 years, who knows? Maybe there will be some other version of writing or using technology to write. So it's
a couple of things you said about self-regulation, that sort of will have some people worried, because as we know, just not going into the regulation element right now, but I think, as we all, I think, agree here, that the pace of this kind of technology is just moving so fast that I think I wouldn't be the only one here slightly concerned that the politicians don't really have what it takes and the understanding, I think, of what it takes. As if we have creators like Elon Musk or Gates or Steve Wozniak saying, wait, pause this technology, we need regulation. But at the same time, it always seems to be in the hands of those that are wielding it, right? So we're saying, okay, yeah, self-regulate, but let's face it. Take ChatGPT, for instance. That's one. OpenAI, heavy investment by Musk, heavy investment by Microsoft. So at the end, these are the major players owning this. Now, curious, Yaroslav, because when I asked the audience and everyone here, how do you feel about if this will be a force for good in the media? You're a filmmaker. You raised your hand as yes, this is a good thing. I kind of thought that you would not agree with it. Now, having heard what has already been said. How do you respond to it in terms of, do you see this really as a tool that will help you? In some way, shape, or form, it will replace prompts. I mean, we had some amazing pitches here, but then let's say that in maybe a couple of years' time, 10 years' time, those pitches will be potentially done by prompts, by AI. Do we even need someone like you?
Well, yes. First of all, I think that that surprised me a little bit that we have this complete agreement in the room that this is something good. It shows us only that producers presented here are pretty sure that they will still have jobs in the near future, and nothing going to change. I mean, it's for us. I mean, as we are going for it, we consider it as a major tool, and I think that what we're seeing right now, it could be compared to at least to be compared to the invention of printing press or the internet. And you can remember that when the printing press arrived on the scene, there were a lot of people that were just worried about it and were against this, specifically church that lost the monopoly to control the reading of a book process or making a book process, so they control the mind of the people for many, many centuries. And and we can remember that books, as a product of the printing press, were burned for many, many, many times, and they are still burning in some places, even in the United States right now. So it's a normal reaction for some part of humanity to react in this suspicious way, because we fear uncertainty. This is a part of the nature of a human being, and that's all right. Now this uncertainty of the future, normal stuff, it's even more with this singularity of the moment where we don't have this enough time to just realize what's going on the planet right now, and the AI as one of the moments like this. But I prefer not to concentrate on my anxieties about the future, but concentrate on the exact ways I can use it or my colleagues can use it. So I look at it as a writer, producer, director, and a human being, and I use it and I try to learn how to use it. But what I learned, one of my biggest personal findings, that it depends on the painter. Depends of the human being who's behind the prompt. Okay, let me say it in the modern way. Just like the painter used its the 𝗶𝗺𝗽𝗀𝘁𝗲𝗄, the colors. So and recently I had this in my feed where some guy put it to Mid-Journey. He put it this create a picture of the salmon in the river, and the Mid-Journey created this cut pieces of the salmon from the supermarket, jumped out from the water in the stream. So you can get this kind of stuff, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people see or read a lot of examples like this. But you can also create something that will win the competition of the photograph contest of the major scale, which was happened already. Yeah. And that drives us to the question, also interesting question, can we judge the results of the artificial intelligence as a form of art? And my answer is yes, of course. And then the next very interesting fundamental questions of the copyrights and the rights against surrounded this piece of art. That's also an interesting way to discuss it. But yeah, I have a lot of examples, and I'm pretty sure that everybody has their personal examples of how you use it, and I'm really open to hear your hints and tips. I must say that I just talked with Pavel, who made this presentation here a couple minutes ago, and he presented this 𝗶𝗺𝗽𝗀𝗁𝗀 project, and he said to me that he made this presentation in the Mid-Journey. So it was made by the AI. And it's not something like you will hide now, because some people are hiding that they've done something with the help of the AI. And he said, like, interesting stuff, that he spent 3-4 hours for each page of this presentation to properly write a prompt that will express what he wants to see on the page. So that's not easy, definitely. But it will definitely change the whole pitching process, that's for sure, and it's already trying to. I was in the Italian Film Festival last year, and there was an Estonian startup guy who just confused everybody when he introduced his technology, which is based on this linguistic AI model that analyzes the script that is submitted for the pitching. It submitted the presentation of the producers, I mean the main parameters, etc., and then it predicts the success of the movie, like what would be the box office of this kind of a movie, and he even suggested the real existing actors for the parts that are presented in the script. So the result was absolutely confused, and I think he might rethink the whole concept, because I don't think the producers will invite him one more time, because that's completely changed the flow of the pitching process. Because when you try to charm people, other producers, and then this guy came to the stage and said, like, well, we analyzed the script. Like immediately right after the producer, we analyzed the script, and our model says that this project was from, for example, Latvia, that with a budget of €1 million, will get in the box office estimated €2,000 or 20,000 euros. And after that, there are no talks,
Yeah. Well, but you're highlighting something there. I mean, with the humor as well, as you mentioned already, people using this technology, and I think it's only a matter of time in terms of, as you said, I like that analysis of the metaphor of, okay, well, you have this way you wield your brush, right? It's for every artist, and it's creating those prompts. But then at the same time, that kind of, the better we use it, the better we're training the system to basically also learn and take that away from us. And again, we go back to those people who control those kind of tools, and I think that's the danger in all this, is that not necessarily your own. Also on IP and everything like that, I think there's so many battles ahead in terms of, as we said, about accountability. You mentioned also data, which I think is really key here, about learning, Mid-Journey as well. That was the key word here, and I think it's going to be interesting for broadcasters on how they interpret. Of course, broadcasters, if we look at major players like Netflix, Amazon, I mean, they're going to love data, and they're going to, I mean, the kind of, also, let's face it, the numbers that they need for growth, the numbers of content they need, I mean, these are absolutely staggering algorithms. And of course, the way, if they have a way to make it easier and more profit, I think they will use it, and I think that's coming. But you mentioned Mid-Journey, about the capabilities. So, and I think this is a nice moment now to prompt us to share the first short little video here, which is a commercial made completely by Mid-Journey by AI. And this is kind of AI's, I think, idea of what this would be as a beer commercial, basically to an American audience. Now, some of it is quite interesting. Some of it is a bit disturbing, I'd say. So let's just take a look at it now. If we can play that first clip of ours, please. So this is also how America is seen by AI, fire, beer, party, so rock music. So it's also interesting. It's learning, right? It's learning. But we look at that. We see, I mean, of course, it's a bit humorous, it's a bit disturbing, some of the imagery, but this is the kind of stuff that it's already capable of. And it's just with each prompt, with each iteration, it's learning. And it's only going to get better. And I'll show that in a little while later about how that is already improving. Also, I think with DALL-E 3, I believe it is now, there's even so many sophisticated photographs. I mean, you said you need the prompt, but the ability and just the sheer quality of it is just getting better, faster than we can really realize. Let's go to that broadcaster argument now, Jonathan. I mean, I think if you look, I mean, I'm going to present you here as the evil corporation in a sort of way. But I mean, this is a great thing. I mean, you have data, soon you'll be able to program these things. I mean, this is a win-win-win for big broadcasters, isn't it?
There's a lot which is solving a lot of problems which have been facing broadcasters for the best part of a decade. I think the video stuff we're seeing is really nice. But if I could take a step back, perhaps, and look at something which we're doing right now, both at EBU and a lot of the members as well, which is using it in text, in subtitling, in transcription. So this isn't something that's being developed. This is something that has been developed. It exists. There are tools that we've created. There are tools that our members are using. It has pluses and it has negatives. And I think it's fair to talk about both of them. Firstly, it's fantastic that now we have the ability to take effectively speech, and via a combination of speech-to-text recognition and a lot of large language model stuff, which is very simple. We can transcribe into any language. So you can take a radio podcast and translate it into pretty much any language that you want. It is incredibly cheap to do so, and the accuracy is really very good. So suddenly across Europe, therefore, you've got a lot of content which can be, there's a shaking head there, we'll come back to that in a moment. There's a lot of stuff which can be, moved pretty much natively from country to country, sort of straight up. Negatives to that, there are a lot of people who are very good at doing this sort of stuff manually. Is the quality better when done by an expert in transcription? Arguably, yes. Yeah, that's definitely the case. There's nuance, there's idioms, there's things that are very hard to understand unless you're part of the culture, which are arguably lost when you do this. But unfortunately, the money talks. So the way the industry has gone in that case, there's a sort of a decent number of transcribers and people working in the subbing and dubbing space who are looking down the barrel of effectively their jobs being completely automated. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be for the most premium stuff. It's going to be for the bread and butter, which is made every day. The advantage is, of course, you've then got content, which you've got stories that you can tell to everyone. You can take a piece of content which may be made in Lithuania, and you can play it in Croatia, and it's accessible. Which, at the end of it, accessibility is kind of at the heart of what PSM is about. It's bringing stories to life.
But accessibility, I mean, you're talking about uniformity of content. I think that's not really a word I associate with stories, with entertainment. I mean, it has to be unique. And I mean, as you said, this is exactly, you fell into the trap in a way of, yes, it makes sense on the numbers, the money is there, you'll see that jobs will fall away. But I think I want to get more on this creativity front as well. And you mentioned large language models. Hajdi, over to you, because we talked about this yesterday a little bit. There's currently also a court case right now, I think, a large suit, which includes John Grisham, George R. R. Martin, just a few days ago, I think. So I think over 17 authors and celebrities who are very much arguing this exact point, that actually going against OpenAI, saying that in that learning process of the tons and trillions of troves of information, much of that was used from potential pirated works or non-pirated works, but now is part of this amazing new thing that can help us create these wonderful stories and replace a bunch of jobs. So the jury's still out on that final ruling, Hajdi, but looking on that now, about also what Jonathan said, the creativity, I mean, uniformity of content, the corporate idea of smashing out content, I mean, something sensitive as well, we can add cultural sensitivity, right? What someone in Lithuania might perceive is going to be very different from someone in Spain or someone in South Korea to someone in Mexico. So where's the balance there? I mean, AI is just that uniformity that's just going to plow through everything.
Well, partially. But again, we have to really think that it's still a tool. That's a tool that should be used by humans. And if you look at it that way, then you still need a lot of human input to get the output. Like, unless you give it free reins and then you get something like this with a beer commercial. So I mean, it's difficult a little bit to really predict how it's going to pan out long term because, yeah, the more we produce AI-generated content, then will then be used to train new data, to produce more generated content. It's a question, and very much possibility that at some point that content is going to degrade. It's not going to be better, it's going to be simply worse, and maybe humans will have to take over once again. But right now, at this moment of time, it really takes still a lot of human input to get anything out of it. So we mentioned already creation of mid-journey images. Like I cannot call them paintings, I cannot call them photographs, it's like works.
Digital works or something.
Works. So just 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, I was at the exhibition of like AI-created artwork, let's call it that way. And at the beginning, it was actually funny because there were a lot of lawyers there in the audience, a lot of them IP lawyers, so copyright protection. And they were, of course, when they arrived, they really didn't think that when you create something with the help of AI, that it's really like creative authored work, that it's your authorship. But once you hear really how much inputs it can take to really generate and create what you have in mind, because that's also very difficult. You know, okay, you can give it some prompts and you'll get something, some generic spit out that's combined a lot of things that it already knows. But if you're a creative person that really have something specific in your mind that you want to use AI to generate, it's bloody hell to do it. So, for example, there was this one artwork, which was amazing to hear how it really came to life, which was kind of an image of an innocent young girl and a big, scary dragon, like on her shoulder. Kind of the idea of the author was to depict the idea that all of us have good, naive, benevolent side, but there's always also some monster somewhere deep within us, and it's a question of how we see it and how maybe others perceive it. And when he said that it took him around 40 hours altogether to come actually to that image that he had in mind, because at first whenever he would put in prompts little girl and a dragon, the machine, so the algorithms would spit out an image of a little girl and a little toy dragon, because that's kind of the closest context and closest relationship between the two. So it really took him hours after hours of changing, adapting the prompts, which ended up, I think he had said it was either 2 or like 4 A4 pages long to actually arrive to what he had in mind. So at the moment, there's still a lot of creativity from the side of humans to really get the desired outcome. But yeah, we will see how it will. I really do hope that, again, coming a little bit to that self-regulation, where the big bad corporations won't allow the technology to take over human touch and human input, because the technology doesn't know the context. It doesn't know the intention behind creating the work. Only humans know that right now. So hopefully, like it was again done now, where there is no intentional firing of people because the implementation of technology. Hopefully there will be more regulation from everyone else who's involved in the creative process to really go down that path and think of AI as a tool to help the existing people and existing creators rather than completely replacing them.
You mentioned Hajdi, hope. We hope there will be, which I think doesn't give great, belief in corporations, or I think hope for regulation. That's a rare feat that we will hope for regulation in this, right?
I know, but again, what I said at the beginning, every new technology and technological advancement simply affects jobs. I mean, does anyone now think of, I don't know, telephone operators that existed few decades ago only? No.
But I think the key difference there is, like, I think if we talk about sort of the transition of Industrial Revolution, different technology. I know the printing press gets mentioned. All these things were very much what I could see now as hardware, right? Something that you could physically own and operate. A lot of this is digital, and in many ways, the way we're accessing it is also in a digital space, not really in our sort of remit to control and to keep. So I think that's also the point here. I mean, these are great tools, and undoubtedly there are wonderful applications, but it's ultimately the people pulling the strings and retaining that data and the access to it that I think has people concerned.
Of course, and again, to generalize a little bit, any technology can be used for good and bad purposes, but it's still, again, it's the humans behind who are the ones deciding of how it's going to be used.
Yeah, I want to go more into the controversy now, because we touched on some of these elements, now going into a bit of ethics and deepfakes. And I think in this kind of direction, we start to get maybe a bit more lines are drawn, and maybe also get a bit blurry. I also want to shoot out to the next creativity point, and I have another video here. This is now also made by AI, of a trailer, and let's challenge about the creativity of what AI can do in terms of a movie trailer. And let's take a look at this next video. Like, that already looks pretty good, right? So when you look at this stuff, right?
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I sense a lawsuit brewing over some of the IP use there.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering, is the music also created by AI?
Some of these things, I think the music not so much, but I think in terms of, as you saw, the faces and everything, the wording, this is the capability. I mean, this is what we're looking at right now. There are many more. You can find a lot of these online. As you said, yes, there are the tools that need to be prompted, absolutely. But if you're looking at this from, let's say, creativity, and once this is more in the system, and we have the companies that know how to use it, that does endanger jobs, doesn't it?
I just want to pick up on Heidi's point, which was around how long it takes to get what you want. So that's great, and there's a really good example where 𝗶𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 in Switzerland had an entire day where the entire day was AI generated. A radio show has a bit of banter in the early morning, it has music, it has weather, it has a bit of news, so it's everything in that day. And so for 24 hours, the script, the voices, the music, all of it was generated by AI, and it was a lesson in how to use prompt engineering to develop this stuff. It's still available, you can listen to it, some of it's really good. It's not far off being, as good, not quite as good, but it's up there as something that you could listen to in the morning. It took them almost 3 months to create 24 hours of content. So, the point there was, we learned a lot about what to do. We learned what can be done, which is you can now get the quality of this amount. But like Heidi said, like getting it to replicate what you can do by somebody who's just very skilled in that isn't here yet. So I think a lot of what we're still looking at, certainly the way I'm thinking about it, is it's not the skilled jobs which go first. If there's something which is inherently something which is completed by really high levels of talent, it's a tool. If there's something which is easily replicable, something that can be got away with good enough, not brilliant, but good enough. That's where we'll see a lot of the replacement, I think, in the next sort of year.
I want to get back also on the deepfakes. Looking at this in your mind, Hajdi? I mean, there's a clear path here where maybe too much is too much, right? We're looking for self-regulation. But how do you see this working out as we see more content out there, deepfakes, that's also increasing sophistication by the day as well?
Oh, absolutely. I remember seeing the first time I saw an example of that, and it was a scene from Shining with Jack Nicholson in it. And then at one point I realized, but that's not Jack Nicholson, it's Jim Carrey. And like you don't notice the difference. So yeah, again, sophistication of technology is really getting to a point where it's almost impossible to discern if it's a real person or is it generated by AI. But again, we're coming there to partially, so intent of humans, will they use it for bad purposes? And unfortunately, these days, I know there are a lot of cases where individuals are using it to harm other individuals through, for example, revenge porn. So there are those really ways of using technology to harm someone, maybe not physically, but definitely emotionally and in other ways. And that boils down to, again, ethics of each one of us as an individual, because, I mean, there are ways that people are harming other people using different things. So scamming is another form of harming other people, and you don't necessarily need AI for that. So it always existed. It's nothing new. When it comes to some commercial aspects, then it's a whole other ball game where I think we'll see a lot of the results of these court battles that are happening now with the IP protections, and also like giving license to use, for example, my face and my character to create something. It will have to be regulated in some way or another, and I don't think it will be able to be used just like that. I think the paradigm is a little bit similar to when Napster came, so when online music appeared and a lot of sharing and everything. It didn't stop the music of getting online and being able to be listened by millions of people for free. But on the other hand, when it needs to be used commercially, then, well, you have to respect that somebody created that music and that you have to pay royalties or whatever. So we'll see, again, how it pans out. Unfortunately, really, at the moment, there are no clear rules. There are no clear regulation. The thing is, what happened is that the jump in quality was so sudden, and it happened, like we're talking about something that happened now within less than a year, and everyone's still trying to get their bearing. But boils down to, once again, to us humans, to our ethics, and how we are going to use that technology.
No, absolutely. And I think also, over to you now, Yaroslav, and I'm reminded, because I want to mention this, there was actually a movie, an Oscar-winning movie, entitled Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Now, this movie included some work using an AI project called Runway, which I think, artist there, 𝗶𝗺𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, admitted to using in terms of the green screen background remover for one of the rock scenes. Obviously, you could say, well, the movie didn't win because of this. But nevertheless, I think it's significant that an Oscar-winning movie does include parts of this, which show. And again, as you said, Jonathan, some of these jobs will fall away, and that's the first rung. And then later, something more sophisticated, then probably the studio execs would say, well, why do we need the second rung? I want to come on the cultural sensitivity and deepfake topic now with you, Yaroslav, because I think especially also, as we've seen here at the festival, some of these stories, some of the pitches, some of the movies here, they're very engaging and very unique. And I think they're made with heart. They're made sometimes with very, very moving stories. Do you think that this could ever be replaced by AI? Like, I know that you've said use it as a tool. It's something you said you use that brush to use it. But do you see that in sophistication ever then going in a way where, well, you're no longer needed, potentially others are no longer needed? Is that something that concerns you, or you don't think about that at night?
My answer would be quite disappointing to you, I think, because I don't know. and nobody knows. And that's why I'm just trying not to overthink about this stuff. But this is the worrying stuff that you mentioned. All the deep fakes, all the disinformation, propaganda stuff, all these pranks that are now involved the high-rank politicians all around the world. That was pranked by some AI-generated imagery. But it's not new on the planet, right? Books were also spreading propaganda, fakes, heresy, some stuff that other considered as something is not good for a man to read. And so it's not new. The scale is different. But in that particular moment, I think that when we have this clutter of images and AI-generated content, everybody can do it now. And you have so many, clips you haven't even seen yet. So it's, there's a lot of content generated by AI. That is why I hope that the real impact of this fakes would be not that big as, for example, the impact of the book Mein Kampf, for example. So just because of the quantity of stuff that people will generate, falsificate, etc., etc. So this is not be that influential comparing to the monopoly of the books that we had in the past.
Yeah. I suppose it's also the access, and I think also by some people, because the technology moving so fast that some are just not able to discern, even those trained with it, to really find. I mean, sometimes you see something, that could be off, but that's just going to improve. And I think also, as you mentioned, disinformation, that's going to be real tough. If it's in a movie or not, we'll see. If they can get away with it, the studios probably would use some kind of generated image, some kind of voice, some, repeat. We've seen that in some films as well, right? I think when Carrie Fisher passed away, they still used a lot of very advanced technology to put her in one of the new Star Wars movies, right? None of those lines were hers. Those are all created out of existing content that they created. So I think the possibilities are cool and frightening at the same time. But as you said, we don't know what it's going to be like. But perhaps having these kind of discussions, I think, is even more key to have, especially in this industry. I think on every front. But it also, as I said at the beginning, I would want it also to have questions and involvement from our audience here. To also include some thoughts and ideas. We have very diverse panel here, so I'd like to now open up the last few minutes for maybe a couple questions from the audience. So opening that up. Is anyone? Yes, in the front row, and you'll get a microphone in just a moment. So if we can just have the gentleman here in the very front. Brilliant.
Hello. I would like you to share the practical experience of your own, where you used AI, which instrument, which case. Like, did you make a pitch deck? Did you make whatever? But not in professional way. I mean, not for the business, but for sending a greeting card to your wife or whatever. Just a personal use of AI. Is it good also only for business, or you can use it in everyday life also?
So thank you. Question here now: have you outsourced your life?
Yes, that's a great question. I saved so much money now for this point, like for 5 months of using this ChatGPT with this paid version of 4. So I paid $20 for that per month, and it saved a lot of money, right? I don't like, for example, I hate negotiating and asking for some discounts, or I hate this stuff. I'm terrible at Indian markets or something like that. I buy with the first price. And so I had this situation. We were here. My son and my wife lives here in Warsaw right now, and they go to the kindergarten, and they missed the whole month of kindergarten. And by rules of the kindergarten, I shall pay for the whole month, even if it was just one day of the month. But, money is very important right now for every Ukrainian, especially at this moment. So my wife asked me, like, can you write the letter to the head of the kindergarten asking, some discount? And I hate it. And I said, like, well, okay, if you want me to do it, I'll do it. And I did not. because I asked ChatGPT to do to make this letter, and I was surprised. I don't speak English that well, you know. I don't write letters in this manner, in a very kind, you know, very gentleman way. I'm more direct in the letters, like, hello, here's my pen. And it was a beautiful letter, short, precise, with my problem, with my question, and it's like, for me, it solved the emotional problem. It was not me asking, but my assistant or something like that. That's my relationship with it. I call him my assistant, or like my helper. So I asked my assistant to write a letter in my mind, and I send it. And
so you've already humanized it. See, it's already.
That's a key thing. You need to, you know.
Do you say please and thank you when you're
Yeah. I say, hello, what's your name? First, my question. What's your name? Or whatever you choose. And I said, like, oh, so you'll be Pickle. So I call him Pickle. so the answer from the kindergarten director was like, okay, you go free for the month. It's going to be free, totally free for you.
It was ChatGPT also.
Yeah, I was going to say, did he use maybe the director also to answer you, possibly? So, we don't know.
That will disappoint him, I think. But that's like an example. But so many examples of personal use. I think everybody have some.
I mean, I just quick anecdote as well. You know, you have admitted to this in outsourcing, and I was present right when they finally announced the AI Act in the European Union in Strasbourg, and you had the president of the European Parliament, who came up to the press conference and shamelessly, 𝗶𝗺𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 said, well, I was going to write a speech, but I didn't, so I just asked ChatGPT to do so. And she read the statement, and there was no, okay, anything else. That was just it, right? So there was like, this is the way of politics. So already our politicians outsourcing their speeches. What about you two? Just really quick anecdote of how you've outsourced your life with any of this.
Outsourced my life. I'm not sure it's particularly practical, but I built a game. I built a game, sort of a text adventure thing. I love games. My partner does not. I think she doesn't relate to the characters. She doesn't relate to the sort of actions. So she's not interested in it. So she's from this tiny town in Galicia called Castro. It's got about 5,000 people in it. So I built a detective game, and it knows who she is, and it knows a lot about the local culture. And it's an adventure where she's supposed to be tracking down a villain who's roughly me. And I've escaped and I've committed some crimes, and she has to solve some puzzles. But that's not what she likes doing when she goes home. So instead of solving the game, she just went to the beach and had a little beer at a chiringuito and then went swimming. But you know, it's generative AI, so it adapted to this really nicely. It was a learning experience. I think it says something about how, if we do end up in an interactive content kind of era, we can create rich experiences. I learned a lot from that, and it was really sort of an interesting learning and almost like philosophical experience about what happens when content changes in terms of how we're engaging with it.
Yeah. Now, Hajdi, of course, the AI expert herself, this is going to be interesting.
Well, for me, it's mostly about kind of saving time, and I love using it a little bit instead of classical search. So, you know, when up until now you ask a question into a search engine, and then you get a gazillion of hits, and then you have to go through all of those links to find actually what you need. Now there's a possibility that it kind of sums up what you're looking for and gives you the best recommendations right out of the bat. So that part, it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, so time saving, but I liked on both components, I think we all agree that we laugh, but you know, it learns. So by being polite to it, this is also, and I think that's another topic about also the programming behind it, the coded bias, which is also how it learns and the programming behind that. But that's for another debate. I think we've hopefully covered a little bit of this very interesting topic. Raising your hands, does anyone here now believe that AI is a bad force in terms of media? Raise your hand. Anyone? Anyone change their mind? So we're still overwhelmingly embracing this technological innovation. Unfortunately, well, if it's just real brief, just very quick only.
Sorry, I thought you were still calling for a question. I just wanted to ask if you see, especially those who are in institutions, some legal movement which would kind of try to protect these new challenges? Because it seems that AI is very Aristotelian. It's based on mimesis. It somehow takes whatever is already existing and mingles it in a way which avoids, let's say, authorship and this kind of protection which was already developed to protect. And that's the threat. Is there on the level, for example, of EBU, etc., some new tools which are somehow addressing this new level of, let's say, the resolution, which would say and protect authorship within this new context?
Yeah, so EBU regulation, what can we tell you? So we're involved. We're involved straight off. We are lobbying at the EU level. We're also talking with Ofcom in the UK about where we see this progressing. Legislation, the conversations that are going on don't actually tend to be about that topic, which is not necessarily the answer that you wanted. We kind of feel that a lot of what needs to be tested are existing copyright laws within the libraries at the moment. That seems to be ongoing. That's been mentioned before. If it kind of depends how they progress. If it comes down in favor of the people who are claiming copyright, it almost feels like then AI-specific legislation won't be needed for specifically those circumstances. Instead, where a lot of our sort of efforts in legislation tends to be ending up is around effectively bias. So bias both at the algorithmic level and at the training level. So we're looking at what's actually being trained on these things. I won't go into too much detail, but there's a fantastic Bloomberg article which looks at bias in image generation. And it's pretty shocking what it finds is if you put certain jobs into it, what tends to happen is white men correlate with the high-paying jobs, and black women end up with the low-paying jobs. And that's pretty much because of the way it's been trained, the source material. So that's kind of where the focus tends to be in terms of the legislation, less on the copyright, because as I said, we think it needs to be tested in the courts first. Maybe next year the answer will be different.
I think also Heidi wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I think also the rest of the world is kind of waiting to see how the situation in the US is going to pan out based on these lawsuits. And it's still not clear which way it's going to go. Will it be kind of, squinting in one eye and saying, yeah, but it's for the advancement of technology, so we will not really take into account that your works have been used to train the models on, or it's going to be, the big companies that have used your works without permission should either take them out or pay or something. And if the latter comes out, then I think it's going to be huge chaos, to be honest. So we'll see. Again, we still don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and also just really briefly, GDPR from Europe, that lacked uniformity, and I think the Americans responded in the first, year almost by just blocking any IP address from Europe. So that's kind of gives you a small taste, and this is a totally different level. But many more discussions ahead. We'll wrap up there. Thank you so much to a wonderful panel, Hajdi Cenan, Yaroslav Lodygin, and Jonathan Broughton. Thank you so much for joining us up here.
Thank you.